What does the wealthiest person you know do for work? A family friend retired after being a COBOL programmer for 30 years. About 2 years after his retirement, a company came to him and said name your salary, and he requested around $1.5 million a year. He was hired on the spot and still works there. Pig farmer. I kid you not. He's my father's old friend. I visited him once when my father and I were passing through the state. He lives in a modest classic farmhouse with his wife, both in their 70s. I mentioned I was starting a school in West Africa as we were catching up. A few weeks later I got a text asking how much it would cost. I told him $40K. Thinking it was really nice of him if he wanted to send a few dollars. X200B. I got a check for $40K. I thought it would take me years to raise that. I'm typing this from Sierra Leone because he also paid for the house I thought would take years to raise funds for. It's a guy the first work with. He started with one Jimmy John's franchise and turned it into 10 franchises. Ran them for 10 years, then sold them all and dumped the money into the stock market and real estate. He did this all while working as an airline pilot. Currently still working at the airline. This dude owns and flies his own private jet on top of all that. My friend sold RuneScape Gold. He made a fortune. Own their own conveyor belt business. Makes almost $2 million a year after it's all said and done. I know the owners of the Four Seasons hotel chain and the owner of Canada Goose. The wealthiest person I know and hang out with regularly built a company IT services and then sold it for several $100 million. He now runs a company that does the same kind of IT services in a different field. He figured out a winning business formula and is just repeating it in a different market. Both in tech. Friend is in a company about to IPO and is VP level, so will do well there. Her husband just sold his gaming company to the biggest gaming company in China for, as she put it, life-changing money. Both very intelligent, super nice, crazy hard-working. They worked for it, and it couldn't happen to nicer people. They inherited a huge corporation. They just don't have to F it up. They own a large construction company, based in rural NZ. Employ heaps of people, are very generous to their hometown. Humble too. Tim. Tim was my Uber ride. Tim is retired at 53. Tim paid for his daughter's college and graduate degree. Tim has 2 houses. Tim doesn't drive and thinks the $50-60 extra on top of my fare is fair price. I took Tim to the casino. Tim tipped me $100. Tim refused to tell me what he did for work. CFO of a large public company. He works 80-hour weeks. Fuck that. Whatever he wants. He was an NFL quarterback though, so he doesn't have to do jack shit these days. Truck driver. Starting his own trucking company. Live off of generational money, doesn't work at all. The first is a self-made multi-millionaire who's owned his own concrete finishing business since he was about 19. The second is a self-made millionaire who became a very successful accountant who was continually promoted at work. He consistently bought stock real estate from a young age. The last person is a millionaire who will inherit family money. She's a high-end real estate agent. Found a diamond mine in the NWT. Business. Doesn't know how to speak. Didn't study. Had tons of generational wealth. Making more wealth from wealth. How owns a few Taco Bells and lives on a hill we call Taco Hill. His wife has big tits now. He's the founder and CEO of a very successful games company. I met him over a decade ago when the company was successful but nowhere near what it is now. He's also one of the most approachable and friendly people I've ever met. To the extent that it sometimes feels like an act. I'm just too jealous to read anymore. Be seeing you all later. I work in advertising. Most large car dealership owners are filthy rich. Doesn't matter if it's a large city dealership or in a smaller market. Many own multiple dealerships or groups. Often they are handed down. I know many second-generation dealers that basically inherited it from their dads. My ex-father-in-law used to own a huge factory that made Nike and Adidas shoes in the 80s and early 90s. That's right, sneakerheads. Big sneaker companies don't actually make any of these shoes. Sure, they design them, but they outsource them to an OEM manufacturing plant company in Asia. Pivoted to real estate investments developments. Imagine having the dollar to buy real estate and land at 80s and 90s prices, and is now worth $150 mil. Complete hypocrite and a sociopath though. Treated service workers like slaves, rude AF, and was a generally unpleasant person to be around. Sure, he's rich, but he sure seemed unhappy all the time. Inherited small factory from his father. Developed it to huge nationwide company. Still goes to work there every day despite being worth hundreds of millions. Worked for a tech company and got paid bonuses for years in the form of company stock. He and his wife decided that when the stock hit $60, they'd sell all his shares. It was somewhere around $5.10 for most of the years he worked. It suddenly started rising in '98, and mid-'99 hit $60. They sold millions worth of stock. Then the company's value burst, along with a lot of other tech companies. During the dot-com bust, if they'd waited a week, their values would have been worthless. They reinvested the money and diversified everything and have been living comfortably ever since. He still works 60-70-hour weeks because he likes working. She's a doctor, an immunologist, and a damn good one. She's been involved with the WHO, CDC, EMA, and other three-letter agencies. Has published papers and does community outreach with a foundation for immunocompromised kids or kids with deadly allergies. She doesn't really need to work. Her family is super rich. Between a rancher, an oil industry consultant, and a local politician as brothers, she's comfortably off, but she's passionate about this and actually nuked her personal life for it. My dad. He does a bunch of random things. He retired from the Navy and uses his retirement pay to invest in real estate. He became a photographer after retiring and did really well for himself. Now he has contracts with a load of schools and sells off temporary subcontracts to budding photographers for schools he doesn't have the time to work with. He flips cars in his spare time. But right now his day job is high school business teacher. Exists. Parents were billionaires. Parents passed away. Person is now a billionaire and plays a shocking amount of video games. They own a food manufacturing company since the 80s. Wealthiest I know is myself. Make a little over $120K being a UPS driver. Laboratory medical director. She earns $500,000 annually. Buys up land and then gets the government to build bridges there. My uncle's grandfather, uncle by marriage, founded one of the largest GIS companies in the state. Sweet government and Fortune 500 contracts. I was a fly fishing guide for many years. And one of my regular clients year after year owned a factory on the East Coast that is one of the top suppliers of O-rings and small plastic machine parts in the world. I never asked how much they made, obviously out of respect. But they always tipped absurd amounts. $1,500 was my biggest tip for 3 days they flew private. And drank shared $600 bottles of wine like they were nothing.